we're not born to rule. Now, I want you to just let that sink in for a second. Forget every myth you've ever been told, every scientific theory you studied, and absolutely every ounce of cosmic ego you might hold about human origins. Welcome to This Explainer, where today we're descending into the dark, deeply unsettling narrative of the Anunnaki. This is an ancient origin story where humanity isn't the crowning pinnacle of creation at all. Instead, we are the direct product of a massive cosmic crisis.
445,000. According to these ancient source texts, 445,000 years ago, humanity was absolutely not meant to be the main character of the universe. We weren't destined to inherit the stars or, chart the galaxies. We were barely an afterthought.
Okay, let's dive into this because the reality presented in this myth is as incredibly dark as it is shocking. Humanity was engineered to break a cosmic labor strike. Let me say that again. We were built simply as a disposable, replaceable workforce. We were cosmic scabs. But to really understand why an advanced alien race would need to biologically manufacture a working class from scratch, we have to look far, far beyond Earth. Our story actually begins on a red planet called Nibiru. Picture this: rust-colored clouds swirling and violently tearing apart under these massive, raging storms. Up in his glowing palace, the supreme ruler, King Anu, is watching his sky literally burning away. The winds are sharp. The atmosphere is just degrading right in front of him. He turns to his council of scientists and asks a single terrifying question. How long do we have? The ticking clock of an entire civilization has officially started. And the answer he gets from the chief scientist is totally chilling: not enough. Deadly solar radiation is piercing right through Nibiru's sky. The upper atmosphere is collapsing way, way faster than anyone could have predicted. Think about that. This highly advanced Anunnaki race, a species capable of crossing the dark void between worlds, is suddenly staring down a desperate, high-stakes crisis of total extinction. Their only hope for survival relied on something called the Golden Shield. This was supposed to be a protective atmospheric layer made of fine, suspended gold particles that would reflect the solar radiation and keep the air thick enough to actually breathe. The problem? Their gold reserves are completely wiped out. Gone. But then, enter Alelu. He's an exiled former king just wandering the cosmos. Out of nowhere, he sends this massive transmission back to Nibiru, saying he has discovered a remote blue planet, Earth, and it happens to be rich in untouched, incredibly deep veins of gold. A massive expedition is instantly launched to save their dying world. But once they touch down on Earth, a bitter, intense clash of leadership erupts between King Anu's two sons. It's a classic, high-stakes sibling rivalry. On one side, you have Enki. His strategy is calm, scientific, and methodical. Study the planet, slowly build a safe base called Eridu, and secure the mines properly. But his brother Enlil, he is driven by sheer panic. Enlil demands immediate action, instant extraction, and a ruthless, fear-driven military discipline to get that gold flowing back home yesterday. Ultimately, Enlil takes control of the brutal mining region in the south, a place known as the Abzo. And the absolute crushing burden of this desperate labor fell on the Igigi. These were the working-class Anunnaki. They were sent deep underground into the dark, sweltering heat, literally choking on poisonous gases for thousands of years. And here's the real tragedy of this myth. Even after enough gold was finally mined to fix Nibiru's shield, Enlil's intense paranoia forced them to just keep digging. He wanted massive reserves. So the crisis was technically over, but the Igigi became perpetual slaves to Enlil's fear of the future. So what happens when you push a desperate working class to the absolute brink for millennia? Deep underground in the toxic tunnels of the Abzu, the drills stalled. In one single, heart-stopping moment, the deafening roar of the machinery just stopped. The ground stopped shaking. The exhausted Igigi had finally snapped. The kinetic tension in those dark tunnels had reached its absolute breaking point. Massive conveyor belts carrying tons of stone grind to a complete halt. The refining systems go dark, one by one. And in the heavy, toxic blackness of the mines, a single torch is lit, then another, and another. Hundreds of hardened, totally exhausted workers gather in the flickering shadows. They're gripping their heavy mining tools, coming to the collective realization that their endless labor will only stop if they physically force it to. And they don't just stop working.
In a stunning, highly cinematic climax, the Ajiji pile their massive heavy drills, their metal-cutting beams, and steel frames right outside the main mining entrance. Sparks climb high into the night sky as they set their own equipment completely on fire. Leaving the roaring flames behind them, the Ajiji board their transport ships and march north to entirely surround Enlil's heavily guarded base at Eridu. It is a full-blown, undeniable cosmic rebellion. The standoff at the gates of Eridu is incredibly tense. Standing outside, the Ajiji leader delivers this crushing, undeniable truth to Enlil. He says, "We served survival. Now we serve your reserves. We breathe poison. We live below ground while you stand in clean air." It's powerful stuff, right? Now, Enlil is absolutely furious. He wants to use his heavily armed guards to crush the rebellion instantly. But his brother, Enki, steps in and warns him that slaughtering their own blood will completely fracture the loyalty of the entire global mission. So they are at a terrifying impasse. What does a desperate king do when he's backed into a corner? Well, they beam an urgent message across space to King Anu back on Nibiru. Anu looks at the situation and decides against starting a civil war with his own people. Instead, he proposes a chilling, incredibly mysterious new plan. He orders the creation of a shadow workforce, a workforce born with no rights, a ticking biological clock, and absolutely no claim to the stars. Which brings us to the next phase of the plan, the House of Shimti, the genetic solution. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how they actually pulled this off. Inside a sterile, glowing laboratory completely isolated from the main settlement, Enki prepares to cross the ultimate biological boundary. He locates a native Earth species, Homo erectus. They walk upright, sure, but they're driven entirely by primitive fear and basic survival instincts. Enki's dark design? He plans to forcibly overlay the advanced, highly logical DNA of the Anunnaki right onto this primitive hominid. The goal is to create a hybrid that is smart enough to understand complex commands, but fundamentally lacks the ambition or the longevity to ever question them. What follows is a dark, frankly horrifying trial and error process inside these glowing artificial wombs. In the early cycles, rapid cell collapse just results in lifeless tissue. It's a failure. By cycle 10, the subjects suffer twisted spines, literally unable to even endure Earth's gravity. By cycle 50, perfect physical forms emerge, but there's a catch. They are completely sterile. Finally, around cycle 100, Enki and his lead biologist Ninma slow the genetic merge down. Life is mercilessly hammered on a genetic anvil over and over until it becomes stable. And they do it. They create a stable, reproducing being, Homo sapiens, us. But this massive breakthrough comes with an incredibly heavy realization. Ninma stares through the glass at their creation and says, "Once we alter it, it cannot return to what it was. We are crossing boundaries." Enki justifies this profound, universe-altering moral breach by stating that their survival simply demands risk. But make no mistake, they crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. They shaped our direct ancestors into an obedient species designed for one thing and one thing only: to work and to die. And just like that, the new order is permanently cemented. The rebellious Ajiji are finally relieved of their duty and sent back to breathe the clean air of Nibiru. In their place, these fragile, newly minted humans are marched straight into the silent, suffocatingly toxic mines of the Abzu. In perhaps the most chilling moment of this entire myth, Enlil walks up and places the heavy metal mining tools into their soft, untested hands. The humans watch his motions, they instinctively copy them, and the endless production resumes without a single complaint. So, it all really boils down to one singular, devastating truth. According to this ancient narrative, humanity wasn't created for high philosophy. We weren't meant to build great, sprawling civilizations or conquer the stars. We were engineered for exactly one purpose: absolute obedience to the system. We were created simply to ensure the Anunnaki's golden minds would never, ever fall silent again. But, this incredible cinematic origin story leaves us with a really haunting question to chew on. What happens when a disposable workforce outgrows its intended design? The Anunnaki thought they were creating simple, compliant tools. But remember, they combined their own hyper-ambitious, godlike DNA with a wildly adaptable Earth species. Just look around at the restless, ambitious, and incredibly rebellious world humanity has built today. It really makes you wonder, what exactly happens when the tools finally decide they want to rule?